for someone, all right, say someone's starting out at square one and they're trying to kind of do somewhat of what you did. They're an expert in something. What are the first steps they can take to try to cultivate some relationships with TV bookers?
Well, I would say that's the first thing is you got to figure out who these people are. And it's not always easy. Even if you know who they are, you might have their email address or their telephone number. They're super busy. They might already have their staple of people. They might not be in a position where they're looking for their next pundit. I mean, that's just a matter of timing, being there at the right time. If they already have a staple of 5 or 6 people for whatever genre that they're needing to book guests to fill, and you show up and knock on the door when they already have 5 or 6, they're probably not going to be that interested in you. So a lot of it's just timing and being persistent and keeping knocking on the door, keeping fresh in front of people. But first, you've got to figure out who they are, and that can come through mutual contacts, or if you know somebody that is already doing TV appearances, ask them to share with you who their bookers and producers are, or you can get a directory and get on the internet and try to research who some of these folks are. That could be hit or miss, but really once you establish that relationship, you get that person to know you, then you can start talking about your credentials, who you are, what you know, what your background is, why what you have to say matters, what's your relevant experience in the field of whatever it is. In my case, it was politics, and demonstrate to them that you have expertise. And then the hard part is, I think, and you tell me, Jen, because you're on the other side of this, have been for professionally as a career, but for me, my perspective, it's then you have to show them that you can, in fact, put 2 sentences together, that you are going to take direction when they ask you to look into the camera, various things like that, that you're relatively well spoken, you don't get nervous, you don't get tripped up on yourself, that you can answer virtually any question. Those kinds of things are what are really ultimately going to impress someone. And, you took a chance on me. I mean, I had a lot of television experience prior to coming on to Bay News 9, but I don't know that you knew that, and you had never seen me probably. So
yeah, and this was before YouTube was really a thing, so I couldn't look up clips. I think I'd seen your resume and I think Al had told me that you had done TV before, so I was like, let's have this guy on, see how it is. And you can also, you kind of do pre-interviews, you talk to them on the phone, see, how are they? And so a couple other things I want to add too. I think Twitter is a great place to find people. You can find Today's Show bookers, you can find GMA bookers or CNN bookers just by kind of perusing Twitter and look for their job title. Typically, the job title is called editorial producer or booker. So that's a good way to try to locate people. And the other thing I want to add is that there's a lot of turnover. So your contact at whatever network it is, they're likely not going to be in that job for many years. So it's something you have to continually do in order to make sure that your Rolodex or your contact list is as up to date as possible. We would still get calls for so-and-so at my old station. They were long gone. And the other thing is, be easy to work with. There are a lot of people I booked as guests, and I would not want to book them again, just due to certain factors. You don't want to be the person that's known as being difficult. You want to be the person that makes a producer's life easier and an anchor's life easier. Yeah. And the more demanding you are, the more the more things you kind of try to ask of these people, the less they're probably going to call you back. I've had a few of those situations, and I'm like, never again will I do this, just because it was ended up being so much hassle. You're like, I don't really want this person back again.
Right. No, and I would speak to that and say, as far as that goes, in terms of being asked back and not being difficult, you don't want to demand a car. When I used to do Fox, they would send a car, and I would even tell them, hey, that's not necessary, I can drive myself. And I think even though they might even insist, hey, no, we do it for everybody, we're going to do it for you. Oh, okay. I think they appreciate that you at least make the effort to make it easier for them. And being available and not saying no and not embarrassing them, showing up on time, those types of things. I did want to comment on something you said about you paid me a compliment that, we could call you and you could talk about anything. And maybe yes and no. If it's political, probably yes. If you called me and asked me to talk about World Cup soccer, I would embarrass myself and I would embarrass you. I mean, there are certain things that I know about. There's certain things that I know very little about. And I made the mistake one time, I think it was on Fox News Channel, going on Fox and Friends, or maybe it was one of the afternoon programs. They called me and asked me to talk about something. It was political, but it was very policy oriented, and it was a policy matter that I was not super familiar with. And I have never been one to do really any research when I'm asked to come and talk about political matters. I just know this. Like, this is what I do. This is my business. I've been doing it for 20 some odd years, paid professionally. It's been something that's been in my blood since I was a little kid. And so it's come naturally. And I've never been one of those that I don't have to cram. I don't have to find out what the topic is and then sit down and read a whole bunch of stuff to be able to put two sentences together and just share some meaningful opinion about whatever I'm being asked. But this one time, I forget what it was, but I know when they asked me to come on and talk about it, it might have been about like education policy or something, which policy-wise, I didn't know a whole lot about. And I agreed to go on, even though I didn't know anything about it. And in the back of my mind, I probably said, hey, I should do a little research on this. But that was counter to what I normally did. And so I didn't do it. I ended up going on that program. And I mean, I'm not saying I embarrassed myself, but it was probably the worst interview I ever gave. I didn't really know what I was talking about. And I imagine it probably showed to any viewer that was watching it, certainly the producer and the interviewer, the anchor that I was talking to, they knew I didn't know what I was talking about. And that particular program, that particular producer, I don't think they ever called me back.